Hey guys, today we're gonna be reacting to 1C Entertainment. I haven't seen this video and I'm just looking forward to reacting to it with you guys. So let's get into it.
The story I am telling you now is something that happened to me 7 years ago when I was in college. At that time, I had a best friend named Charles. Charles dreamed of being an exorcist and always
Sorry, y'all,
said
my
that
bad.
he wanted to exorcise evil spirits with his own hands.
Okay.
Since he wanted to practice, he would often use a Ouija board to summon evil spirits. One day, he told me that he needed help exorcising evil spirits and asked me to use the Ouija board with him.
So, since it's almost Halloween,
I just went to Charles'
that's
house
what I'm
without
gonna
thinking much
do
about
and
it. I couldn't have
for
imagined the
Halloween.
consequences that choice would bring. At
Okay.
midnight, we lit candles and started using
Bro,
the Ouija board.
don't
But
even
that's
tell me
when
you're
the
using
event
that
I will
Ouija
never
board.
forget occurred. Charles called out, "Devil, evil spirit, come here!" Then Charles asked if anyone was
Oh my
present in the
God.
room, and the pointer moved to
That is
yes.
so
When
dumb.
Charles asked, "What is your name?" the pointer moved to Moloch. Charles muttered to himself, "Okay, Moloch, show us your physical form. What do you look like?" After this,
Oh
the
my
pointer did its
God,
move,
these
and the
people
room
are
was
so
still
dumb.
and silent. Then Charles shouted, "Show us your terrifying face!" But at that moment, suddenly a pair of eyes appeared on Charles' forehead. I screamed in surprise. I thought I was hallucinating. Charles looked over at me, not knowing what was going on, and the eyes on his forehead, which looked like snake eyes, moved around very strangely. When I pointed
That
to
was
Charles'
me,
forehead,
I would
shouting,
have
"Your forehead!"
not
Charles
been.
touched his forehead and screamed, "Ah! What is this?" Then a small mouth appeared on his forehead, and the mouth spoke in a strange voice. "Look in the mirror, Charles." Then deep red blood
That's
flowed out
why
of the
people
mouth
should
and
not be
covered Charles'
stupid.
face. Charles ran into the hallway, howling, and I followed him. Charles screamed and went into the bathroom, turned on the shower, and a moment later came out of the bathroom soaking wet. Some of the blood remained smeared on his face, giving him a faint red glow. Charles stood there with a blank expression. The eyes and mouth were gone from his forehead.
Dang.
Charles and I couldn't say anything. What the hell happened? Charles' body was shaking. Then Charles ran back into the room and shouted, "I know how to exorcise! I'll send these evil spirits to heaven!" Charles picked up a book and opened it. The title of the book seemed to be about exorcism. But at that moment, I saw it. Something crawled out from the corners of the dark room. They were people the size of small dwarves.
Oh
Their
my
bodies were
God.
black, with red
That's why I
buttons
never
sticking out of
messed
their
with that
backs and long
stuff.
tails. They were crawling on all fours toward Charles. I thought I was hallucinating once again, but Charles was seeing them too. I saw his fearful expression and the tears in his eyes. The black dwarves crawled towards Charles and began to gnaw at his legs. Blood flowed from his legs as he screamed in pain. I shouted to Charles in a trembling voice, asking what to do, and he managed to look at the book he was holding and began to recite a spell. However, he could not read properly because of the pain and just continued to scream. Then I saw numerous black blisters forming on Charles' legs, and I
That's
saw
why
black
you don't
liquid
be
bursting out of
stupid
them.
and
The
mess with
dwarves
that
were crawling
stuff.
up
Like,
Charles'
I
body,
don't mean to
gnawing
say
at
that,
every
but
part of him. Charles's eyes
don't,
rolled
like,
back, and he
do
screamed
that
so
stuff.
much
That's why I
that he
don't
lost
do that.
consciousness. I thought that his parents would come to the room because Charles was screaming so loudly, but for some reason, no one came to the room. After about 5 minutes, Charles' whole body was
I gotta
covered
blur
with
that
thousands
crap.
of black blisters,
gotta blur
and
it.
black liquid covered his body. I
I
couldn't
gotta-
believe what I was seeing.
I'll
and I
blur
didn't know
that.
what to do. Eventually, the black dwarves crawled back into the corner and disappeared. I stood there, blankly, unable to
That's
do
why
anything.
people
Tears
should
flowed
not
from my
be
eyes like crazy. And when I looked at
should
the
be
clock,
smart
it was
about
3
what they
a.m.
do.
I called the police, and the police and Charles's parents were shocked when they saw Charles' body. They rushed Charles to the hospital. They asked me what the hell had happened, but no matter how much I told them, they never believed me. It was natural that they couldn't believe it. If it were me, I wouldn't have believed it either. Charles received emergency surgery and fortunately did not die. But it took 3 months for his body to recover to its original state. The doctor said she had no idea what caused Charles's body to suddenly become blistered like that. Ever since that night, Charles has not used the Ouija board again. And he's also given up on his dreams of becoming an exorcist. He's become a very quiet person. He does not socialize and mostly just stays in his room. Time has passed, and I do not
That's
keep in
why
touch with Charles
you do
anymore,
not
but
do
sometimes I
dumb
wonder
things
how
like
he's doing
that.
now.
My name is Samira, and this is a haunting
Alright,
story that
guys,
was passed
another
down from my
one.
grandfather to my mother, and now to me. Years ago, before my parents came to Canada, they used to live in a small village in a war-torn country in East Africa. During that time, there was a war that had been happening in the country for the last 4 decades, and because of that, there were reported hauntings in many places based on the deaths that were happening daily. To give an idea of what might have happened, I come from a long line of exorcists, so there are a lot of instances of family members dealing with the supernatural. My maternal grandfather was notorious for his experiences, and he did so many exorcisms that half the time he would encounter spirits almost on a daily basis. In this story, we'll call him Jabbar. One day, Jabbar was riding his bike through the forest, heading to another village to run an errand. Several miles down the road, he encountered a gentleman who was walking down the road. The man halted my Jabbar on his bike, and since he was naturally generous to people, he stopped his bike to see if the man needed any help. The man approached and appeared to be a well-dressed individual. He was wearing a white robe, with honey-brown skin and cornrows on his head, not a single speck of dirt from travel. The man asked if he could hitch a ride with Jabbar, and he agreed to give him a lift. The man climbed on the bike with him, and so he continued down the road. Several miles down the road, the man told Jabbar that they were close to his destination, so he stopped the bike and allowed the man to get off. Then the man walked into the bushes and just disappeared. Jabbar was shocked, and he stood there frozen for a good minute before he snapped back to reality. Jabbar continued to his next destination after that. It's been decades since my mother heard that story from my grandfather, and we believe the man was a lost soul who was a casualty in the war.
Dang, that's creepy.
20 years ago, when I was in my early 20s. At that time, I had broken up with my girlfriend and was going through such miserable days. I wanted to focus on something new to forget her. I decided to go hiking, and while looking at the map, I decided to pick a mountain to go to. Among them, I found a mountain whose name was unfamiliar to me, and I chose to go to that one. Once I arrived, I started up the mountain path, and it seemed like a normal place. As I was climbing the mountain, though, the path ended at some point. However, I was still feeling upset and reluctant to go home, so I continued up the mountain and into the forest. Then, at some point, I heard the sound of something moving up ahead of me. I was startled and stopped, thinking it was a wild animal. It sounded like an animal aggressively eating something. I lowered my body to the ground and slowly looked in the direction the sound was coming from, and there was something moving there. When I saw it, I almost fainted. It was covered in red fur, and I couldn't recognize its face. I could only make out its huge nose and mouth, each tooth almost as big as my thumb, and it was eating something. The sound of it chewing down to the bone echoed through the mountains. Its large hands tore the flesh of the lying beast, as if it were tearing paper. The creature's hands were similar to human hands, but its fingers were long and thick, about 3 times as long as a human's. What it was eating was the carcass of a huge animal, like a bear. I felt like vomiting, but I held it back with all my might, thinking that if I threw up right there, it would catch me. I turned around quietly, but the sound of the trees and bushes moving made it look in my direction. It quickly took off a huge chunk of meat that must have weighed about 10 pounds in a single bite, and then started to run towards me. When it raised its body, it seemed to be at least 8
Run,
feet
man,
tall,
run!
and the sight
Run!
of its enormous body and appearance took my breath away. Its eyes were bright yellow, and its pupils were so small that they were almost invisible. It ran on 2 legs just like a person. It ran toward me with its mouth full of meat and at an incredibly fast speed. I thought, I'm going to die right here. I didn't even scream. My legs felt weak, but I ran with all my might. Behind me, I could hear its heavy breathing and footsteps very clearly. I even felt as if the air it was exhaling was touching my back, but I couldn't tell if it was an illusion or real. I ran so fast that my feet felt like they were burning, and after a while, I didn't hear any more sounds from behind me, so I looked back and saw that it had stopped and was looking somewhere else. I saw something like a deer running in the distance, and then it ran toward the deer. I thought this was my chance to get away, so I ran as fast as I could down the mountain. I heard a deer crying out, and then the sound of bones breaking behind me, but I kept running without looking back. It seemed like I must have descended the mountain in just 30 minutes, even though it took me 3 hours to climb to where I was. I think that because of the extreme situation, I was able to push my body beyond its normal limits. When I got back to the base of the mountain, my leg muscles were so sore that I couldn't even press the accelerator in the car. I barely managed to find the local police station, and I had told them about the strange creature in the mountain, but the police didn't believe me. They said that people are often eaten by wild animals on the mountain. They said that all the bones and flesh would be gone by the time they found the remains, and only skulls were ever found. They said there must be some terrible beast that lives up on the mountain. I pleaded and told them that it wasn't a normal animal, but they simply wouldn't believe me. The thing I saw, it moved its hands like a person, ripped the meat, and ran on 2 feet. It wasn't an animal or a human. It was something else. I went home and Googled it to see if anyone else had reported anything about it, but I couldn't find any information about any creature similar. To this day, I still don't know what that creature was or how I managed to get away from it alive.
Okay, guys, make sure to like and subscribe and turn notifications on, and check out our other videos. And since it's gonna be Halloween soon, I'm doing like Halloween related videos, so see you on the next one.